Way back
They
in
should have just canceled
2019, it was and there were more than a few outlets and
I don't know why Netflix would have even continued with it, because like it's only going to damage their brand and make them look bad. Like you probably should be paying money to not have it shown.
saying that possible, actually releasing the show. And let's just
I don't know why they released it. They should have just canceled it. That's fine. But what I'm saying is that a lot of people obviously don't like this type of content.
And I guess bringing in a new White Wolf at this point in the season, a bold move and a tall order for Liam.
And of course, he wanted to honor the character that had already been set up because he knows that he's stepping into a role. But at the same time, he wanted to make sure that his performance was authentic, that it felt like him, that he wasn't playing and mimicking anything. And so
now I have to
I think that's just so unfair to the guy. Are we really going to blame everything and scapegoat this guy? Well, think about it. If the show was so great, why did the first guy leave? It's so unfair.
I'm the most annoying guy on set because I'm saying, excuse me, you do realize that this should be happening and they wouldn't do that, and you haven't read this, that means this would be impossible. And everyone's just going, Henry, just shut up and do the thing. And I'm like, I don't want to do the thing because he wouldn't do it this way, and he can do this. And
apparently The Witcher 4 is well, you know, so bad it got cooked. It did. It got completely cooked. It's totally dead.
You're Siri.
Siri, are you here?
Gay!
We're looking for Siri.
Is he gay?
premiere.
Promote this thing until a month before it came out. They knew that switching from like Henry Cavill to Liam Hemsworth, as downhill as the franchise has gone, everybody knew that even they knew it'd be shit. Were we expecting this? Witcher Season 4 is sitting at 17% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes right now.
It is. This show was going down the shitter for years. People were hating this show for years.
To agree with the responsibility of that lays at the feet of one woman, the aforementioned Lauren Schmidt-Hissrich, who has finally gotten everything she wanted, complete control of an epic fantasy series on Netflix without the shackles of Henry Cavill. And how did it turn out? Well, about as bad as you would expect. It's time to talk about
I can make whatever I want. I've got him on a farm milking people. I'm gonna send him to the ladies with the red bonnets on. Because everyone can have their version. Everyone shouldn't. Everyone doesn't matter enough to have their version. What matters is the millions upon millions of people which have bought the games, and they deserve to be represented. Lauren doesn't. Lauren's irrelevant. I'm not sure why Lauren's the showrunner. She already scared off the best asset that the series has. Getting rid of Henry Cavill and keeping Lauren would be like losing a Wagyu steak and having it replaced with a carrot. I mean, sure, both.
What you're seeing isn't a fantasy story about monsters or magic. It's Netflix's biggest empire burning in real time. The Witcher wasn't supposed to fail. It was supposed to be the crown jewel, the streaming titan's answer to Game of Thrones. But what started as one of the most promising fantasy sagas of the decade has spiraled into one of the most catastrophic meltdowns in modern television. Critics are brutal, fans are outraged, and Netflix's silence says more than any press release ever could. Ratings tanked, audiences fled, and what was once a beloved world of swords and sorcery became a graveyard of broken promises. But here's the shocking part. This collapse didn't happen overnight. It was the end result of years of quiet tension, ego clashes, and decisions made behind closed doors that tore the show apart from within. This is the story of how The Witcher, once Netflix's shining hero, lost its soul, its star, and ultimately, its audience.
It's about the activist showrunners and the activists at Netflix doing what they want with the character, regardless of whether that's in line with what everyone else loves. We saw Lauren Schmidt-Hissrich say this in the lead up. Geralt is a little funnier this season. He's a little more dry. He's also a lot more emotional. He's going through a lot of different things than we've seen in the past. That's what everybody wants. An emotional Geralt. It's exactly what everyone's looking for.
Back in 2019, when The Witcher first dropped, it wasn't just another fantasy series, it was an event. Netflix finally had its Game of Thrones moment. The trailers were epic, the soundtrack was thunderous, and the casting of Henry Cavill as Geralt of Rivia felt like destiny. His deep voice, brutal swordplay, and obsessive respect for the books turned him into an instant icon. The first season smashed records, pulled in millions of new subscribers, and flooded social media with "toss a coin to your Witcher" memes. The future looked untouchable. But beneath that unstoppable momentum, tiny cracks were already forming. Creative differences that no one outside the studio walls could see. Because while fans saw Cavill as the guardian of the lore, not everyone behind the camera shared that same devotion.
But yeah, so now apparently the audience scores are down to 17%. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I saw The Witcher Blood Origin, and Jesus Christ. Like, I was watching that for my channel, and I couldn't make it past the second episode. It was shocking how bad it was. And I was expecting it to be bad, and I was still kind of surprised, like, Jesus Christ, this is something else. It's like a woke fever dream, and it's abysmally made.
That's what killed me on The Witcher, ultimately.
The Empire looked unbreakable, but inside, a battle for control had already begun, and it would soon consume everything Netflix had built. The real story of The Witcher's downfall didn't start when Henry Cavill left. It began years earlier, in quiet arguments that no one outside the set ever heard. At first, it looked like the dream team. Netflix had the budget, a passionate star, and a global audience hungry for fantasy. But behind the curtain, creative tension started to simmer. Reports from people close to production claimed that Cavill's deep devotion to the books, his almost scholarly respect for Sapkowski's world, didn't sit well with everyone in the writer's room. To him, the source material was sacred text. To others, it was just inspiration. Insiders described Cavill as intense, even obsessive, showing up on set with highlighted pages of the novels, quoting passages and suggesting changes that aligned more closely with the lore. He wanted Geralt to feel like the weary philosopher-warrior fans knew, not just another brooding action hero. But that kind of dedication clashed with a modern TV system built on algorithms and engagement metrics. Writers reportedly argued that sticking too closely to the books would make the show too slow, too dense, or, as one rumor claimed, too nerdy for mainstream viewers. Those creative disagreements slowly turned personal. Cavill saw himself as the guardian of The Witcher's integrity. The writer saw him as overstepping his role. Every meeting became a battle over tone, dialogue, and direction. Should Geralt speak like a man who's lived through centuries of war, or like a sarcastic action hero designed for viral TikTok clips? Should the story explore moral ambiguity and tragedy, or speed toward the next monster fight to keep casual viewers watching? The cracks widened as production went on. According to some reports, parts of the team even mocked the original novels, calling them old-fashioned or too complicated to adapt. To fans, those words would have been blasphemy. To Cavill, they were unbearable. He pushed harder for authenticity, but in doing so isolated himself from the creative team. It wasn't just a disagreement anymore. It was a silent power struggle between two visions, one of art, one of commerce. And Netflix, instead of stepping in to mediate, quietly sided with the algorithm. They wanted results, engagement, and mass appeal. Cavill's desire for complexity and lore accuracy was seen as a risk. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere turned cold. Meetings grew tense. Cavill reportedly began limiting interviews and focusing solely on the work, trying to keep the project alive even as it slipped out of his control. Crew members noticed the shift, the energy that had once filled the set now replaced by something quieter, heavier. When the second season aired, those tensions subtly surfaced on screen. Scenes felt rushed, the world's mythology felt watered down, the dialogue, once layered and poetic, started to sound corporate and flat. Longtime fans noticed, even if they couldn't pinpoint why. Online discussions began asking the same question: why doesn't this feel different? That was the first visible crack, the one that hinted at something deeper, something festering. Because by then, Cavill's battle wasn't about fame or ego, it was about principle. He believed that if the soul of the story was compromised, everything else would crumble. And he was right. But inside Netflix, that conviction wasn't seen as loyalty, it was seen as resistance.
So while the show looked perfect on the outside, the war inside was eating it alive. Two sides, two visions, one collapsing empire. It was only a matter of time before someone walked away, and when he did, it would trigger one of the biggest fan revolts the streaming world had ever seen. Then came the moment no one thought would happen. Henry Cavill walked away. No dramatic farewell, no leak or warning, just a sudden announcement that sent shockwaves through the fandom. One day he was Geralt, the next, gone. The internet erupted instantly. Fan petitions demanded Netflix fire the writers instead, with hundreds of thousands of signatures appearing overnight. To fans, Cavill wasn't just the lead, he was the show's soul. He'd fought for the lore, corrected scripts on set, and respected the books more than anyone else involved. Replacing him felt like betrayal. Netflix tried to spin the news, calling Liam Hemsworth's casting a fresh new era, but the audience wasn't buying it. They didn't want a reboot. They wanted the story they were promised. Within hours, social media turned into a digital protest. Memes, outrage, disbelief, it was everywhere. What was once a fandom united by love was now an army fueled by anger. And Netflix, instead of listening, decided to double down. The backlash that followed wasn't just noise. It was a cultural moment. Twitter threads, YouTube breakdowns, Reddit forums, TikTok edits, the Witcher fandom transformed into a movement. Hashtags like respect the lore and bring back Cavill trended for days. And then, when The Witcher Blood Origin dropped, the so-called prequel meant to expand the universe, it was a disaster. Critics called it hollow, fans called it disrespectful, and the show became a symbol of everything wrong with modern franchise building. People weren't angry because Cavill left. They were angry because it felt like Netflix had stopped caring. The deeper fans looked, the more they saw signs of corporate meddling, algorithm-written writing, and a creative team that no longer believed in its own world. And the more Netflix ignored the outcry, the louder it got. Commentators compared it to Star Wars' fan divide, others said it was worse. Either way, The Witcher had become something unrecognizable, and the true meltdown was only just beginning. Months later, the new era finally arrived, and it was every bit the disaster fans feared. The premiere numbers looked strong for a moment, but within hours, reviews poured in like a flood. Critics gave it middling scores, but the audience score crashed to the teens on Rotten Tomatoes. The words soulless, fan fiction, and emotionless appeared everywhere. TikTok filled with brutal side-by-side comparisons of Cavill's Geralt versus Hemsworth's version, a digital funeral for the character fans had loved. Every shot, every line, every attempt to recreate that old spark only highlighted how far the show had fallen. Behind the scenes, leaks described chaos. Scripts rewritten mid-shoot, morale collapsing, actors frustrated by constant changes. What once felt like a world of passion had turned into a checklist of corporate demands. Netflix wanted bigger spectacle. The team tried to deliver, but bigger doesn't mean better, and no amount of CGI monsters could hide the fact that the soul of The Witcher was gone. Inside Netflix headquarters, panic spreads like wildfire. Just weeks earlier, executives had been preparing for another victory lap. Press tours, bonus checks, the usual celebration of a billion-dollar franchise. Instead, they found themselves in a digital storm that wouldn't stop growing. The numbers were horrifying. Audience scores in free fall, social media drowning in memes and outrage, and fan petitions calling for the firing of the entire writing team. The boardrooms that once echoed with confidence now filled with silence and frustration. Emergency meetings were scheduled daily. Some executives wanted to pause production on spin-offs, others argued to cancel them entirely. The brand that had once represented Netflix's bold, creative spirit now symbolized corporate arrogance, a failure that money couldn't fix. And in the middle of that chaos stood showrunner Lauren Hisrich, the creative head of a series suddenly branded as a disaster. For years, she had defended the show's evolution, believing that modernizing The Witcher would expand its reach. But now, her vision was under attack from every direction. Reporters wanted answers, fans wanted accountability, and the internet was turning her name into a target. PR advisors begged her to stay silent and wait for the storm to pass. But she didn't. In a moment of exhaustion, or maybe defiance, she opened her phone, hit Go Live, and faced millions head-on. The stream began calmly enough. She spoke softly, trying to explain the decisions that shaped the new season. She said the changes were made out of love, that the team had worked tirelessly to honor the world while keeping it fresh. But the comments poured in faster than she could read them. Line after line. "You ruined the show. Bring back Cavill. You killed the soul of The Witcher." For a few minutes, she tried to keep her composure. But then one comment appeared. "You ignored us for years, and now you want sympathy?" And everything stopped. Her eyes dropped, her breathing slowed, and then, in a voice that trembled with exhaustion, she said the line that defined the entire collapse. "Maybe we simply couldn't satisfy everyone." Those words were honest, maybe too honest, because in that moment, the internet saw not a showrunner defending her work, but a human being at her breaking point. Within hours, the clip went viral. Edits flooded TikTok and YouTube, some mocking, others empathizing. It became the face of The Witcher's downfall, the moment when the illusion of control shattered.
Behind the scenes, morale hit rock bottom. Cast members stopped doing interviews. The production team went quiet online. Writers who had once defended the show deleted tweets. Internally, Netflix issued strict media guidelines. No one was allowed to speak publicly about The Witcher without approval. It felt like a lockdown. Some crew members later hinted anonymously that the environment was emotionally exhausting, that every day on set felt like painting over a cracked wall. The executives who'd once pushed for a cinematic universe quietly shelved the idea. Planned spin-offs, merchandise tie-ins, and animated projects were paused indefinitely. Investor calls that used to highlight The Witcher as a success story now skipped the subject entirely. Inside the company, people stopped saying, "when The Witcher rebounds," they started saying, "if." But the biggest loss wasn't the money, it was the trust. Netflix had built its empire on being the studio that listened to fans, that gave them bold, daring stories the big networks ignored. Now, that reputation was gone. The same audience that once championed Netflix's innovation now accused it of killing creativity. And for The Witcher, there was no coming back from that. The collapse wasn't loud or dramatic, it was slow and suffocating. By the time the dust settled, everyone involved, from executives to editors, knew the truth. This wasn't just a show that failed to entertain. It was a story that failed to believe in itself. And that, more than anything, was the real tragedy of The Witcher's internal fallout. When the official numbers came out, the nightmare became data. Viewership had collapsed by nearly half in the first week. Critics labeled it the fall of modern fantasy. Even members of the crew were spotted liking posts criticizing the direction of the show, a silent rebellion inside the castle walls. Netflix's dream of building a sprawling Witcher universe was dead before it began. Analysts blamed fan toxicity. Fans blamed corporate arrogance. But the truth was simpler. Passion can't be faked. You can pour millions into marketing, polish every trailer, and hire a dozen new writers. But if the people behind the story don't love it, the audience always knows. The Witcher became the ultimate warning sign. Proof that ignoring your core fan base in pursuit of metrics leads only to ruin. And the tragedy is, it didn't have to end this way. The foundation was strong. The love was there. But somewhere along the line, the story stopped being about Geralt and started being about control. In the end, The Witcher didn't fall because of one bad season or one casting change. It fell because it forgot what made it matter. Fans today aren't passive. They protect the stories that speak to them. They recognize when something authentic is replaced by something calculated. The Witcher was built on passion, on heart, on one actor's refusal to let the magic die. When that passion left, everything else followed. And that's the real tragedy. Not the ratings, not the memes, but the loss of belief. The sense that a fantasy world we loved had been stripped of its soul. Maybe one day Netflix can rebuild it. Maybe the world of the continent will rise again under new hands. But until then, The Witcher stands as a warning, a tale of how even the mightiest empires can fall when they stop listening to the people who built them. What do you think? Can The Witcher be saved? Or is it already too late? Tell me in the comments below, and if you love uncovering the stories behind Hollywood's biggest implosions, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because sometimes the real drama begins when the fantasy ends.